Welcome back, everyone, to the Atlantic Front. I am the Jake Man, and I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. It is Sunday, August 3rd, and we've got a lot to talk about with regards to the weather. As you can see, we have our friendly map here that is really talking a lot about some of the changes that are on the way when it comes to summer into fall. I live in the greater Charlotte area in North Carolina, just south of North Carolina, or Charlotte, North Carolina. And we are experiencing some pretty interesting things. And if you've even been outside recently, you're probably seeing a pretty good change in the weather. The cold air damming is what they call it. So I am right in this zone right here, okay? And as you can see, there is a good amount of precipitation. I'm looking out the window right now, and I'm not seeing a lot of precipitation, and that is strictly because I am right on the edge of this moisture. So what's setting up is called cold air damming, and it looks like this, all right? So the Appalachian Mountains are sitting just like this, all right? Okay, and then this, I guess this area here turns out to be a, let's just go ahead and actually make this look like I actually try to do something here. So it looks like it's like a cold air damming like that. And then the cold air rushes down into the Carolinas like this, and that's why we can get as much as I think it's about 79 degrees out today. And if you think about that, it should be 90 degrees is our normal. Okay, that's what we should be getting right now in these areas. But we get a little reprieve, and that reprieve is that this cold air comes down into the Carolinas and skirting along the Appalachians. So when the Appalachian Mountains do this, it I guess pins in some of that cold air, and you get this wonderful break that we're all getting right now. So I hope that you guys in the Southeast are enjoying this as much as I am, because it is awesome. So that is what we're going through right now. And as far as the rest of the Atlantic front, we're not seeing a tremendous amount of precipitation that's really affecting everything going forward. We're going to talk a lot about what's going to be coming into the Atlantic front and some tropical cyclones. We have some remnants of some, and we also have some new data that's coming forward. So stick around. Let's talk about that, and welcome again to the Atlantic front. Here you can see the water vapors from the GOES 19. So you're seeing a pretty good representation of what it looks like out there with regards to water vapors and some of the pressure systems that are starting to kind of float around or grow, and you can see that expansiveness within as some of these disturbances get out over the warmer waters. And we're going to talk about the warmer waters as we go along here, but just to kind of give you a look and see about what we're doing here. This area here, all right, this one is going to turn into something, but it's not going to affect anything with as far as the United States of America. So that one is looking like it's not going to do much. And again, we're just looking at the current model, current data, and seeing how everything is really going forward. Now, August 3rd, all the way through, even I think we saw some hurricane activity even into October last year. So you're seeing we're just kind of getting into the mix of this is really why I wanted to kind of do some deep dive. I mean, you're going to see a lot of different things on with regards to weather, and you're going to see that on YouTube. But I really like to take some, I call it deep dives, but really pick apart some of these areas. So I'm going to try to give you more information involved with these areas of interest, is what they'll call. So the next one is this guy right here sitting right over the Greater Antilles. And this has really been setting up for some time. We're seeing this area kind of explode up. And that's usually what happens when you see some of this water vapor. And when you see some of this water vapor that is really going forward, or it is really starting to, I guess, kind of move forward. So you can see how this area tends to really get interesting, because you're seeing this, the temperature bands. So you're seeing the lower pressures kind of jumping through. The other side of this is that really kind of a deep brownish type of color. You can see how that colder air damming is going into this area. So you can see that right here. You can see this large area is really almost dipping down and hugging this whole area like that, which is why we're getting the 79 to 80 degree temperatures today, which is 10 degrees off of this. So it is very, very nice little break here, but you can see how all of this is starting to, be affected. So this drier air is really how it starts to affect, and you can see a lot of this moisture is kind of setting up over the I guess just west of the Mississippi, and then you're seeing within the Gulf a lot of activity that starts to kick up right around now too. So the winds and the cyclonic vorticity is what we call it. So the wind streamlines, you can see how it's looking like this. A lot of this air is moving down like that and then moving down like this. So it pushes that whole sector down. And when it's pushing that, or I should say that wind's pushing into different sectors. So that's when this cold air moves like that. And then you still have a lot of tropical air that's moving forward. So we're not losing a lot of humidity. We're still kind of seeing that humidity affect a lot of the area, but nowhere near what it was. And just a weekend ago, we were setting records. We were in I think it was as much as 102 degrees around here. So you're talking about 102 degrees that was sitting straight over top of this area. And once that happens, then you think you're in for it for the summer. And then we get a setup that looks so amazing for the next couple of weeks in the Atlantic front. So it's really, really heartening rather than disheartening. I kind of say that too often. So that is the cyclonic vorticity. And then you see we're going to look at the sea surface temperature. So we're going to go ahead and let's take a look at this. So we're going to jump over here and then kind of hover over there. So now we have the United States and we're starting to warm up, but this is nowhere near what it usually is. So you're talking probably in the 80s. You can see a lot of different surface temperatures over here. And this is also a big reason why you don't see any real cyclonic activity currently out into the west coast of Africa. So this area right here, all of this is usually that tropical wave is what we call it. So these bands of hot air that blows off of the Sahara and then goes into with a lot of different dust. So it goes into the Atlantic, and then the disturbance ends up mating with the cloud cover. And then when the clouds and then that heat and then the disturbed air with regards to the sand and it just basically becomes a real tropical wave over and over and over again. And that's why we see so much of this start to affect us, because it comes into that whole area. But we don't see anything right now. So there is zero stuff going on. There are some things that we're watching, but currently right now, August 3rd, we're not looking at anything that is going to be any kind of disturbance that's going to be worth seeing or worth even looking at this particular point here. So And then we also have I'd say probably the most reactive version of this. And what I mean by reactive is that this is probably I'd say the most representative of where the sea temperatures. So you're seeing this area right here, and this is all of this area like that is basically too cold. So if it's too cold, then you see a lot of almost kind of the same thing that we're seeing up here in the cold air damming. The cold air has been pushed down into this right off that coast of Africa. And so we always talk about how we collect this data. So when we're collecting, I should say collecting the air. So when the air moves this way, all right, or the disturbances move into our area, which is the Atlantic Basin, you then see a lot of this surface is almost, or this sea temperature becomes fuel. And when that fuel is I guess ripe, then you'll see that usually in August and September. But there's a block right now, and the block is doing this, and it is stopping a lot of all this. So it keeps trying to. You saw a little bit of that push outward. So saw this kind of going this way. So a lot of the stuff's going around it. Well, actually, it was more like down here. So you saw it like that way. So it was gathering some of that very warm, moist air and the sea temperature. So it was riding that whole wave forward. So, but that's what we're seeing here. As far as this is definitely but this is definitely enough fuel in here. Absolutely. To create something, to create a almost what we call a homegrown cyclone or a homegrown hurricane. You're seeing a lot out here. So this area is where we're going to talk a little bit about. This is where the remnants of Gil were up here, and they were moving this way. And then the Iona is out here, and let's see here. We're going to do that. And so the remnants of, or I should say Iona is splitting like this. So when you're having your hurricanes, there's two of them. So you've got your hurricane that sits right around here, and then you have your hurricane that's sitting right around here. And we'll talk a little bit about how they're going. But there's our friend Hawaii right there. And Hawaii tends to be, obviously we want to make sure that Hawaii's is going to be okay. But right now it looks like they are going to miss a lot of the garbage that's going through Gil and Iona. So let's take a brief look at that and show you what they are talking about. So this is Gil. There's Hawaii right in here. So it is the post-tropical cyclone. So we're seeing that. So this is 5 a.m. today and then 2 a.m. Monday. So it's really staying a tropical depression, and it's looking like the cone is going to keep it northeast of Hawaii, and that's fantastic news. And then you have the tropical depression Iona. Now, this guy had some real punch to it. So you can see the path of where it's going. So you have Hawaii sitting right here, and when Hawaii, you had Gil also out here. So Gil was right around here shooting like this, the cone. So then this was how it was going forward. So this one actually got as much as a category 3 storm. So you saw some pretty good heat that comes in there. And remember what we saw with the surface temperatures. All of this area was very, very warm sea temperatures. It was just fuel for that. So right now the West the Pacific and the West Coast of America is more of the star right now. And we tend to pick up in the Atlantic front we end up coming down the pike here soon. So we will see some things, but let's talk a little bit about what we are going to see going forward with the tropics. And here we have the Atlantic Basin. So we're talking about some percentages here. So you've got about a 40% chance of some sort of cyclonic formation. So you're seeing that in this area, and this is over the course of the 7 days. So nothing right now with any respect to a hurricane that's going to be something that you guys are going to have to look out for today, but we're going to be watching this for sure. So we'll call this a watch out and see. Okay, so we're going to watch out and see this. We did talk a little bit about the homegrown type of storms. So this area here has a 40 to 60% chance, and that is looking like it has the potential to just be kind of a nothing burger here for us, or some fish storm there that kind of sits out there like that. But we are seeing a ramping up. All right, we're seeing this whole area really start to ramp up as the ocean starts to really allow for the fuel to get these storms to be pretty massive and destructive, or at least have the possibility of being destructive. So that's why we're really trying to get involved with a lot of pushing this towards you guys, so you can see a lot of the forecast ahead and allow for a preparation event and all that. So the let's see here, we have the radar. So this was where we were looking. This was the red one. Not the red one. So this was where we were looking at. This was the X right here, and it had this little yellow looking thing like this, and we were saying that it was going to go like that. And then we had the more of the tropical development area here. So this had the 20 to 40%. And then this one had the 40 to 60%. So that is really kind of where we're at right now, as far as seeing any type of really creation or any of the cyclonic formation. So we're seeing these areas start to develop, but in reality, we're still pretty slow with regards to the Atlantic storm possibilities. So we're gonna take a little look here and see how this all settles in a little bit on this. So if you see how that damming is starting to set up here, that's where that we were seeing this, that was the area here like this. So that cooler air was coming down. So you're seeing that form. You're seeing that in its entirety, just like that. And then the Appalachian, we'll call it the Appalachian block. So it's always been able to stop a lot of the severity of these western storms, or the west moving storms. So you see a lot of this push here and then push here like this. And then it will dip down into that. You can kind of see how that's forming. But then this comes in, and when it starts to block, it hits this, and then you see a lot of that air can almost jump over the Appalachians like that, and then connecting. So you see how that whole thing tends to be the way it will set up for us coming off of that. So it's also jet stream driven as well. So you see a little bit of this, the jet stream will set like that, this. So you see a lot of the tropical air pushing north like this, which is very common. And then you see the cooler air come like this. So it sets up like that. It also gives us a little bit of a reprieve out here. Even though we do have some warmer waters out here, it's not nearly as warm as it could be. So you're seeing a little bit more of colder water. But the main player in all of this, or I should say the main player in all of this, is always the Gulf. So when the Gulf is involved, it's usually something that's going to be a little crazy. So you're seeing some sort of setting up here, out here in the Greater Antilles and the Lower Antilles. So a lot of this water vapor, and we'll go back to that, this whole area here. So you see this. So when this is forming, you're seeing not a lot in the Mediterranean, but then you see this tropical wave start to come in here. And this is that zone right in there. So if you want to see in this, that's the way it's kind of pushing like that. So they were already identifying this area here. All right. And then, of course, this area was the other guy. This was that one form that was going to go off this way. So you're seeing kind of the push of this. I believe that we're going to be talking about this. This is the one where, and I don't mean to get a little bit on this one is not being steered correctly. There's nothing really steering it. What's pushing it? Nothing. So which way is it going? So it's just setting up. And as the winds, since these winds, and you can see the shear that's pushing off of this, these winds are really showing you that they are not really allowing a lot to happen. Okay. That's where this whole area goes. So what I tend to see most likely is this stuff, or this explosion of water vapor, and kind of seeing how it all goes. It does have the ability to jump in here like that, as long as that steering column doesn't seem to be setting up too much. So let's just take a look at that in its entirety. So we'll use, since this is cool air, and you can see it even represented that way, you have the cooler air steering this way, like that. And then you have we'll use this color as humid air going this way. All right, more humid air. All right. And then you have a stalled steering area that sets up like this. All right. And then it doesn't know which way to go. So it's almost just in a explosive pattern that just kind of sets up right in there and sets in there. So if it was to go, let's see here, if it was to go down, all right, down into the Lesser Antilles, which I don't know which direction it's going to go. If it was to do this, it could collect into this tropical wave that's trying to go this way. So if it's trying to collect into that, then you almost have this formation of two bodies of disturbed air. And if that becomes the case, and you can see it already setting up here, I mean, it's already in this zone right there, and it's already in that, I guess, in that player. So if the tropical air tends to be something that is, sets up in this area, again, pretty red zone here. So if this was to go into here like that, and then this area was to go into like this, then you have almost a disturbed air that sets up into the fuel within the Gulf. I don't know if particularly this is going to do that, but I haven't really seen that. But what we can do is take a look and see what the GFS and the Euro are talking about. Here we have the GFS, and we are in the North Atlantic. So let's take a look at all of what the forecast models are showing us. And this is a weekly zone, so I'm going to try to do a lot of this, try to get you some of this information Monday, Tuesday. I probably will start getting you out one on Mondays or Sunday nights, and then for the week, and then maybe try to pick up some of that a Wednesday and then see how it's going. Obviously, as things start to move forward and we see a lot of creation, then we are going to give you that information. But here is the GFS, and we've got a good run here, folks. Okay, so we got right at August 3rd. That's where we're sitting at right now. So what we're looking for is any type of creation. Now, what does creation mean? Creation is a low pressure that is right around 110 to 112, 114-ish, or sorry, 1012, 1009, 1014. Those are the pressures that's considered normal atmospheric pressure. So that's just the normal. So we've always seen these. So if you see anywhere from the high pressure to the low pressure, you're seeing the difference between a high pressure and a low pressure is very simple. And a low pressure starts to talk about the possibility of stormy weather. So if you have a high pressure at 1022, let's take a look at that. So you have one right over here. So you have right there, you've got a high pressure at 122 and a low pressure at 104. So they are both within the acceptability range for normal weather. That when I say normal weather, I'm saying that there isn't a real push for unsettled, crazy weather that's going to develop into something terrible. Does that mean that something is not going to form, or some light rain, or even some storms? I mean, it's summer, so you're going to see any type of creation of these storms. But right now it's saying, the GFS is saying, that basically over the entire United States, minus where I live, there is really no tend to be a creation for unsettled weather or storms. So as we move forward, let's go ahead and move forward. So we're going to see this. So we are going to see the movement. So the pressure kind of goes away. So you have that low pressure sitting off here. So I want you to watch these areas here, okay? These two areas. And then obviously here. So we have the formation of something off into the tropics. We also have a formation in this area. So pretty much the same way that the National Hurricane Center is talking about as well. So we have, for all intents and purposes, we have 3 areas of concern. Let's see, what color do we want to use? So we have creation 1. All right. So we have one here, and we have another here, and we have one here. Those are our 3 areas of concern. And that was what we were talking about earlier as when we were looking specifically at the outlooks for from the National Hurricane Center. So those are the 3. Those are what we're going to, so I want your eyes to always be on those 3 areas. Okay. So your eyes are still affixed to those areas. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what they start to do. So one of them starts to disappear, but look at the energy down there. Okay. So that energy is still there. So as we saw it kind of disappear and dissipate, and then it came back again. So we still have those formations. Here we go. So we still have our friend over here, which is going to be a fish storm. So I'm not too worried. And then as we move forward, this guy is already starting to, I guess, channel some of that warmer air. We saw a lot of warmer ocean sea temperatures. And as we saw, that was a lot of warmer sea or ocean temperatures off the west coast of the United States. So the East Coast, we still are trying to find any type of creation or anything like that as with these cyclonic events or possibilities. So it does tend to go into looking like it's going to start to move something again. Now we've got this energy dissipating. We have another high, which could be some more cold air that's pushing towards this way. And again, we're talking about August 7th. So if we're already talking about August 7th and still saying cold air, you're talking about a pretty good August for the Southeast. So now we've got 3 setups from a standpoint of whether or not these areas are going to come to fruition. Now we have a 4th setup. And this is where it gets all kinds of fun. All right. So you have a setup right here, a setup right here. This one's still hanging out there. And then you have this set up as well. I think that this is just going to be one of those lower Mediterranean type of disturbances that just stays into that equatorial location that just sits. But does it have enough guts to do this, or does it have enough guts to kind of come into this or something like that? I just don't see it happening. I think this one is still going to look like that. I think that's probably the directional this is going to go. And this one's really a homegrown storm. And I think this has the potential to kind of go this way, maybe skirt the U.S., the East Coast. And then this one is just, I think, the remnants, because a lot of that warmer air has got to be somewhere, right? So if we're still seeing a lot of the cooler air setting up like this is that cooler air, which is crazy in August. So that's what we're looking at. Those steering currents. You see some instability here. That is something to look forward to. Kind of, it does wrap around like this. So I still think that is that push from the north that's keeping a lot of the heat and some of the oppressive humidity at bay. And that's still, we're in Saturday, August 9th. So not too far off. So I think a lot of this stuff still has the potential to change, obviously. And we're just dealing with the GFS. But this is by far the most action that we've seen so far. So that guy's going to stay off the side there. It looks like the formation does start to skirt. So this one was here. We lost a little bit of the development, but will it come back? Let's see. So we're only focusing right on this guy right in here. So that one's still a homegrown storm moving up the East Coast. And that's where we are with that. So we are Monday, August 11th. So we're getting a little bit out there. And that does skirt the East Coast. And looks like we do get some rain events. For the most part of next week, we're going to see some rain. It's going to be a rainy pattern. The Euro, the GFS, the Canadian, the NAM, everyone's all kind of saying this is going to be a pretty moist or a very wet pattern that's moving forward. So again, the GFS is kind of keeping things only really a development of a small one. So then you see another homegrown guy, and looks like this might be our winner chicken dinner here, but it does tend to stay off the US. So the GFS, but that one forms up. So this is by far the lowest pressure that we've seen. So 981 pressure. So that's a pretty good storm this far north. Again, the heat that kind of settles in like this. You see some swirling patterns around here like this. The cooler, African, tropical wave potential stays at bay all the way through August 17th. So, as that tends to move, as this guy tends to move off, then we're sitting in a pretty good situation. We do see a little bit of a formation down here that is going to be something that's going to keep my eye. So we're going to go ahead and call this another watch and see. Okay. Watch and see. But it looks like that cooler, that cooler air that's kind of pushing like this. And when I say cool, I'm not saying very cool as in super cool. I'm thinking probably more like normal. So it kind of is doing like this type of a thing, like that. So it shouldn't be that much of a deep, but you can kind of see it's like this, almost like that. So it's a lot of the moisture is bursting through, but for the most part, is this high temperature or this high pressure system going to be pushing this down? So that high is going to be, so we'll have to see. Let's see what happens here. See what the good old GFS says at the end. And we are now August 18th, and we are still forming. Now, got something that opens up right here, and we still have our friend here. So now this would be closer to the hurricane season, August 19th, so middle August. This guy is setting up here, and this guy is setting up here. This is that, again, you're starting to see that waving, that wave pattern that starts to move off of Africa. The equator kind of sounds, kind of keeps itself a little bit, Central America kind of stays quieter throughout August 19th. You see a lot of our jet stream moving like that. So you're seeing, I guess, a setup that kind of looks like this. So is that an indicator of even more cooler air coming down? It's not pushing up. We'll have to wait and see. Is that the reason why a lot of the eastern storms are being pushed this way? Because they're kind of moving this way. So the Atlantic basin is just being almost rerouted and redirected. So that is very, very interesting. When we go through this type of a pattern, we go through this type of, I guess, early August without a lot of tropical activity or tropical cyclonic activity. It does leave us open for September. Of course, September is usually when a lot of this stuff comes forward. So what's going to make it over there? I don't know. We'll have to see. Well, let's take a look at the euro and see if that's any different. Here we have the euro. Now, typically, the GFS tends to say that there's a lot more storms than the euro. Just always the way it's been. The Canadian probably is the most, I remember doing a lot of this last season. Canadian tended to be the one that said the most. It was like a happy medium between the euro and the US or the GFS. So we're setting up here, and this is today. So this is the 3rd. So you're already seeing some much more tropical development that the euro is already saying. So they're saying this, and then this, maybe some setup over here or something that kind of moves around, but nothing in that tropical wave pattern off of Africa. So we are going to look over here. And there we go. So let's see. What do we have for the euro? The euro says that something is going to start popping up, kind of the same basic setup. It looks like a lot of that stuff loses steam. But remember those 3 and 4 patterns that we were watching? They're saying that really over the Greater Antilles, that's going to be a high pressure setup, and then the fish storm is going to go off to the sea. But look at that tropical wave down here. Look at this area. Just keep watching that for the euro, because they're going to say that something starts to form right around August 6th, and then you see a little bit more of this energy start to organize a little bit. And then what we saw is that this rather, so the GFS had this. The GFS had this going like this, and the euro kind of does it like doing this. So we'll have to see who wins. I have no idea. So we'll go ahead and keep on moving. So the euro is now saying that we have something creating off much more of the in the middle of in the ocean out there with that. It's never really, I think it's being fed more than anything else, but nothing is really going off of that southeastern quadrant into Bermudas and things like this. So I'm not really worried too much about that. Maybe a lot of rain, that's for sure. So look out there in the right off of Africa in the tropical wave portion. So we have what I believe is probably going to be our first fun storm here. So looks like that's setting up to around 987. 987. Is that right? It's either 987 or it's hard to see. There's not a lot of clarity here, but as you see directionally, it looks like it's going to go north. But this could be a little bit of a storm. But the euro kind of keeps things quiet. So that's what the euro looks like. And let's take a look at the Canadian. So not too much discrepancy between everything as far as the Canadian's concerned. Let's go ahead and take a look. All right. So we have nothing going off into the really the Atlantic basin is kind of quiet. A lot of high pressure that sets up off the west coast of Africa. Looks like it's the same principles and predictions as the GFS and Euro, and I would say that it even says that that little piece of energy tends to start to break up, and then another jumps into the mix, but we've got a little bit of an interesting one here at the end as far as the Canadian goes. So the Canadian doesn't have a lot of homegrown storms, but what it does is it has a new energy off here against August 13th, so not that, about 10 days, and then you've got a guy right here. So if that's the case, all right, and we are taking a look and see the direction of these. So watch the direction. So it looks like this thing is going straight, I'd say maybe in that, I guess, the northeasterly pattern. So that could be, does it tend to move forward? Does it tend to go northeast? Does it just take that jaunt? What's the steering going to be like this? So August 12th and 13th, we should see something that is going to be pretty interesting to track. So not too far off, everybody. And it's great to be back. It really is. I'm having already a great time. And when the weather changed so drastically, I said, let's go ahead and get into my studio because this will be a lot of fun. So when you have this many lights on around you, it tends to be a little bit warm. So the fact that it's only 79 degrees outside, I was like, I got to get back in the studio and let's start talking about storms and start talking about the weather. So as always, this is the Atlantic front. I know this has been, if you guys have made it all the way back to, to the back of this video, I really appreciate it. But this is the Atlantic front, and I'm going to put a lot of chapters here for you. And I think I've been keeping this a lot of my videos long, and I've been chopping them up a lot. But I think you guys like to see the the natural state of what we're looking at in our thought process. And I've kind of made a decision that I'm going to allow you guys to see my thought process, because I really like to be surprised with you guys as well. So as these runs come in, I want to be just as you are, to see if kind of seeing exactly how something sets up and the patterns. So thanks again, guys. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. I am the Jake Man, and this is the Atlantic Front. We'll see you very soon.